Let's go have a look at Karen. Karen had on David Seymour, and it was a particularly interesting little conversation. Not that I particularly find Karen all that entertaining, but the subject matter was interesting. So ACT at the moment are basically building some of their base to do with anti-vaxxers, anti-mandates, anti-co-governance. These people are coming across to ACT. They're very Trumpian, and we saw that when they turned on the media when there was a protester at their campaign opening the other day. But there is some truth in the danger that was in the Wellington protests 18 months ago. And David Seymour has the dilemma that he didn't engage with those protesters, and he didn't engage with them because he saw the evidence of the danger that was within. Now, Karen wants to absolutely try his absolute best to make it seem like David Seymour is exaggerating. Oh, it's just on the internet. All sorts of things happen on the internet. But David Seymour very quickly says that the information was coming from sources like the SIS. So ministers tend to believe SIS information. Let's have a look at the whole conversation. It's only about 4 minutes all up.
And I'm getting tons of texts on this, David, so I'm going to put the question to you. Isn't part of the problem that you didn't go and talk to those protesters on the lawn of Parliament, whether or not you were meeting their leadership? Why didn't you? Because it put you firmly for those people.
And this is also ACT's dilemma. It's a little bit like what Plunket's had for the platform he's running, is that ACT has actively been courting these people, the anti-vaxxers, the anti-mandate people. But when push comes to shove, and he has to make account to these people of some of the things he actually does and believes, he struggles.
Mind in the camp of people who were calling them a river of filth and hating on them.
That's not true.
I acknowledge there will be people that think that, but just come back a second at what you just said. It's that you have to pick a side, and if you're not on my side, then you're on the bad side. That's the kind of thinking that we're actually...
Why didn't you just go down to Parliament and walk amongst those people and just talk to them on the ground, David?
Because of disease.
For the simple reason that I actually did more than any other politician.
No, I'm not asking you what you did do. I'm asking you why you didn't go. And I did. I went down there, and I supposedly it was risk because I was a journalist. Why didn't you just go down and have a talk to the people that were there?
For the very simple reason that the conditions that everybody agreed were reasonable never got met. And
who agreed they were reasonable?
Everybody in Wellington.
No, I didn't. I never got asked if any conditions were reasonable. It was everyone, and don't equate David, Wellington with the Beehive or with Parliament.
Yeah, but also remember, this is another one of the dilemma for even these far right, further right politicians, is that the platform is going to eventually eat you if you don't 100% agree with the cult. If you deviate by 5% from the cult, then you're thrown out of the boat. Now, this happens on the far left and the far right, and at the moment, David Seymour is about to deviate 5% from the cult that he's been trying to get votes from for the last 6 to 12 months.
Or with Trevor Mallard.
Well, I'm certainly not referring to them. I think if you ask people, was it reasonable that the streets should be clear so that businesses could operate?
So you're telling us you decided that you weren't going to talk. Just go for a walk and ask people why they're there. Why didn't you do that? Winston Peters could do it.
Well, it's pretty simple, Sean. My standard that actually all other parties adopted after criticising me for it was you got to let small business owners operate. You got to stop the threats, which were serious and were real. They were from a tiny percentage of people, but they were real. And stop
what threats? What are we talking about here? What are we talking
about? Hang
here?
them high.
Well-documented plans to kidnap politicians and hold show trials. I mean, I'm sorry, Sean, but some of that is indefensible. And so when
real credible plans. They held mock trials on lawns at a later.
So Plunket is going to very much try and minimise this and say that Seymour is being dramatic and that it wasn't true. But shortly,
protest, David. Were there credible plans? Do you know of credible plans by the anti-vax movement or the people protesting the mandates on the front lawn of Parliament. Have you been told there were credible plans to kidnap politicians?
Oh, Sean, at the time I saw them. Sean,
What do you mean you saw the
can't downplay
plans?
that. I saw online discussions.
You saw
kidnapping
online
people,
discussions,
Sean.
and there's a long way between online discussions and credible plans, David. There's a lot of shite online.
So you don't think it should be
He
taken
would know.
seriously?
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of shite online. He would know. Very good, Chewy. The other thing is, I don't know whether, I'm confused as to whether Plunket is playing a role here or not. But if he honestly thinks that the MPs aren't being fed, information by the protective services, by the police on the grounds, that's where they're getting their information from. For some reason, Plunket seems to think that forget that it's Seymour, politician X, has had a look on the Trade Me message boards and seen some nasty words, and that's been their decision. I don't know if he's being genuine in thinking that this is not going to have come from the SIS or further up the chain as to credible threats, but he either doesn't get it or he is actually just playing that dumb on purpose.
David, I don't think that your life was at risk if you'd gone down and walked amongst the people
That's
at
very
that
charitable
parliamentary
of you to say
protest.
that, Sean. You fucking
Well,
dingus.
it's very easy for you to say now, Sean.
It is.
but
Well,
at
it's
the
easy to
time,
say because I walked
it
amongst
had to be
them,
taken seriously.
and I was evil mainstream media.
No, you're not.
No, and
No,
also
you're not.
sorry to burst his bubble, but because you hold no weight of you hold no weight for anything to happen to you. If someone did something to Sean Plunket, who cares? If someone did something to a politician, that makes a difference. So like a hostage. I'm not saying that a politician would have been taken hostage, but a hostage has to have value, and Plunket walking amongst them has no value. Now, me walking amongst them has no value. So there's no value all around. But so, yeah, of course you could. And I have to tell you something. When Winston Peters walked around, he didn't just wander by himself. There were some pretty big, heavy guys walking around pretty close to him. And remember, and I can bring the clip up next time we're here to remind you, Chantal Baker herself has told us in an interview I did with her that the place was too dangerous for mainstream media to go to. So she has acknowledged that the place was dangerous. But you also acknowledge that the village in itself, not the last day of burning, the village in and of itself was a dangerous place for media to be, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I told media, I went up to them actually and I said, hey, if you guys want to interview people, let me, and I had my partner and my security guy with me. I was like, let us come and help you find people to talk to, and that way we'll make sure that you guys are safe. So I actually asked multiple media groups that, because I knew that if I was standing there, people were much less likely to try and, yell at them or do anything. And so that's what I actually went up to multiple media groups and offered.
So we know it was dangerous. And unfortunately, even though I do love that freeze frame, Sean Plunket's having to struggle at the moment. Looks like he's struggling with a poo, doesn't it, with that face? Struggle with the moment to try and dismiss David Seymour for being a drama queen when David Seymour has been getting his information, as will be confirmed shortly, from the highest security sources in New Zealand.
Actually, you certainly make a virtue of not being mainstream media, Sean. But in any event, the issue was that there were some very reasonable standards that we didn't want threats, we didn't want businesses put out of business, and we didn't want passers-by being harassed. Now, I set out that those were the criteria. Absolutely, we'll go and address the protests so long as those things are adhered to.
Yeah.
But
David, you know what political rhetoric is like. You talked about blowing up a government ministry. So you know what political rhetoric is like in a campaign.
Yeah, the threats that I saw were a lot more literal and not made in any kind of jest, I can assure you. So, that's what we were dealing with. Now,
where did you see these threats? On the internet? Did you report them to the appropriate authorities?
On the internet.
Or did you get these reported to you?
Sean, they were shown to us by the appropriate authorities.
Okay, so were you guys getting briefings from the SIS or the police about the threat you were under by the protesters?
Yes, we did. You've got to take this seriously, Sean. I mean, I'm sorry, this was a serious situation. Now, we were doing everything we could to bring people together, but it wasn't possible in that circumstance. I actually think that if we want to have better dialogue, then we've got to accept the facts and truths that occurred, and also accept something else, Sean, which is this. While it was a tiny, tiny minority of people that ruined it for everybody. There were a lot of very reasonable people that felt they'd been pushed out of society
And pushed
that
out of their
felt
jobs.
that it would have been good to talk to. Those people were let down by a tiny minority. Now, you can try and blame me for that, but in actual fact, it is a tiny minority of people within that protest that let everyone else down. That made it difficult to have an honest, healthy debate.
There you go. I think that couldn't be clear. And this is what I thought, right? So here's what I thought. Let's say the greatest concert in the world was going to happen at your local stadium, the greatest concert in the world, right? There's going to be 20,000 people there. And 10 of them had anthrax in needles. Tiny, tiny percentage. Would you go? I'm pretty sure most people probably wouldn't. But let's up it. 10 of them had firearms, illegal firearms on them, and had made threats they wanted to use them. Would you go? I'm thinking most people probably wouldn't. So even though it might have been a tiny, tiny percentage, if the threats were credible and the SIS had said to all the politicians don't do it, then why would you go? Why would you do it? I just don't think you would. And I don't think, no matter what the posturing that Mr. Plunket would do, most people would. A credible threat, even from 1% of the group, if that 1% of the group makes a credible threat, then that's a credible threat that if the target of the credible threat turns up, it's very likely they're going to have interaction with that 1%. And the last thing, sorry, Chewy, I know I'm sort of hogging the light here a little bit, but this is the last thing I wanted to show. A key reason why I'm voting for Winston. Seymour has retained some skills he learned on TV, dancing around questions. It's incomprehensible, and many of this world have envied New Zealand for its liberal democracy. Lots of stuff around pushing the jab, disgrace. Lots of people saying in here that they are voting for Winston. How hard is it to say? In hindsight, I may have been wrong. Pretty much impossible for a politician like David. Thank goodness we have one with a backbone like Winston. So, I wonder.
Powdery, dusty old backbone.
I wonder if that interview is just enough to push Winston over that 5% mark. If 10% of the people or 5% of the people or 2% of the people now turn away from ACT because of that, they hear now that, that what a shill. He obviously listened to Jacinda the shill about the dangers in the thing when it was just a peaceful village, river of filth, my ass, might be just enough to push people away from ACT and push them towards Winston.
Yeah.
That was my thought.
We had a comment that highlighted this, right? They had hang 'em high on the Parliament forecourt, right? And that wasn't necessarily directed at one person. It was directed at everybody in Parliament because they were all part of the decision to mandate and lockdown, which was their whole sort of thing. I hate that Sean made that call that the protesters themselves were called a river of filth. I remember that comment. That is incorrect. It is because they were pouring their portaloos directly into the stormwater drains, which is going into the harbour. That was the river of filth. That narrative has been tried to be twisted because they know that that's true. When I hate you bringing up a clip where I fucking agree with Seymour. Damn it.
No, I just think listen.
Right.
But it's beautiful because what he's done is he's told the truth. I mean, it kind of echoes what I said 10 minutes ago. Just tell the truth. Just be honest. And he's told the truth. He said we got information from the SIS and the correct authorities that there was proper danger down there, so we didn't go. He's told the truth. It's really important that when people tell the truth, we highlight it, even if we think he's a dirtbag in so many other places. He told the truth.
Because when you're in that sort of thing, basically you've got a leaderless mob on the parliamentary grounds, right? Say you wander down there, and even if you're their guy, right? Talks go wrong, and you're not their guy anymore. Grab him. Now we have a sitting MP essentially as a hostage. These sort of things, these mob rules, you cannot go, oh, they probably won't do it. And certainly the police and diplomatic protection and that sort of thing will be going, don't do it, because there's no fucking way we'll be able to get you out of there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And this is what annoys me about Seymour, right? I honestly don't think he's a dumb guy.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that's one of the things that I detest about him is that I think he knows what he's doing and who he's speaking to. But then when he's confronted with it, and we saw this when Lee Williams cornered him at a meeting in Ashburton, right? Oh shit, this is the personification of the internet forums that I've been talking to, and they've cornered me.
Yeah.
I've seen it again in another clip when an anti-vaxxer cornered him at a street corner meeting. Is that Seymour in the moment is fucking reasonable. He knows these guys cannot be trusted. He knows that they're unhinged, but he continues to not learn the lesson about pandering to them. Plunket is a piece of shit. That's my whole review of that sort of thing. He can't put himself in the same position as an MP. He was miles away from the protest. I maybe he did wander amongst his people for a bit, but he's calling himself mainstream media. What, in case someone recognizes him from Fair Go 50 years ago? Get fucked.
I just think this idea as well for Lux, and we've talked about this a lot actually in this year about the dilemmas that these politicians have, and it flows on from the stuff we've been talking about with Posey Parker this week, that they have to reconcile that Nazis are trying to further their narrative. That Luxon and Seymour have to recognise that they have actively, I'll even be generous and say whether they've done it on purpose or not. I think they have done it on purpose, but let's just be generous. Say whether they've done it on purpose or not, they've attracted the racist element. That doesn't mean that everyone who votes for them is racist, but they have attracted the racist element. They have attracted the conspiracy theorist element. They have attracted these people to vote for them. So what do they do when these people then want to call in their chips? And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing, and I reckon ACT is going to not do as well. I think that they're not going to get as good a result on election day as they have been polling the last 6 weeks. I think they'll sit around where they are, and they may even drop a little bit. I really do. I really think the Greens will be by far and away the third biggest party, and I think it'll be ACT. And I think I just get the sense that they're not going. They've fired all their bullets that are going to get them traction, and so now it's like they're at the top of the hill. So the only way is down. They may hold where they are now or go down. I don't think they're going to increase that much. I could be wrong. Politics is such a hard thing to measure, but I don't think they're going to get any more than sort of what they've got today.